Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 22 of Typewriter Talks. My name is Maureen McDowell. I'm the founder and executive director of Keepsake Lit. We are a literary arts organization based in Tampa Bay, Florida. And today we have with us Adrien Julious Butler. Did I say it right?
You did get it right.
Okay. She is a fiction writer, a poet, and she is also a part of Kitchen Table Literary Arts, which they're celebrating their 6th anniversary today, correct?
Yes, happy 6th birthday, Kitchen Table.
Yay! We actually are recording this on Friday and this goes live on Tuesday, so let's just do a week-long celebration for Kitchen Table. Right?
That sounds awesome. I celebrate my birthday for a month, so that's easy.
Yeah. So tell us what you're working on right now.
So right now I am on my 3rd draft talks with my publisher for a fiction novel that I'm working on called Saturn's Return. And so while I'm in the process of waiting for that thing to happen, I'm starting my rewrite of another novel.
So you're busy.
Oh yeah, it's my life. My life is just busy. That's how I work.
Yeah. And you also have a child, correct?
I do. I have a 17-year-old going to college next year.
Oh, I know. Mine just started high school, and I'm just like, start preparing
so fast. Just like take all the pictures, drive her crazy with pictures.
Yeah, that's the least. She's like, no. She's always like, are you going to post that? Yeah. So tell us about your writing process, because do you have a full-time job?
I do. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have a couple businesses.
Yeah.
And they're pretty successful, which is great. And I'm also a nurse by profession. So yeah. I don't work in nursing too often, but I do still do that every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
But my new writing process, because writing, since it doesn't really pay the bills, can tend to get pushed to the back. So right now, it's in my schedule like everything else. So daily, I have an hour carved out to write, and that's my physical writing time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm always reading.
So you try to carve out that little space does that include writing or rewriting or both?
Writing or rewriting or both, but I have to sit down for an hour like I would do anything else that's on my desk and do whatever I need to do for writing. So kind of wherever I am in the process, if it's rewriting, if it's writing, if it's editing, whatever, but just to carve out that hour. And then pre-COVID, we were doing Kitchen Tables retreats. So that's actually where I was getting most of my work done. Because they're over like a weekend and you're locked in a room, in a house, not a room, but you're locked in a house with other writers and the only thing you're supposed to do there is write.
Yeah.
So I would get like 2 or 3 days of writing done. It's like amazing. So COVID kind of put a damper on that, but I'm sure it'll come back in some way.
Yeah, it is. It's just about finding space for it. Like, I like that you put it on your calendar and that's your writing time. And it's you have to fit that in when you have a job and you have a child, and so it doesn't have to necessarily be this full-time life. I mean, that's the ideal, right? But
yeah, that's the ideal.
We have to pay our bills, and we have jobs, and we have families, and we have, significant others. So to carve out that space, that's what the book Deep Work, Cherie was talking about that. Figure out what your time is. Maybe it's 1 weekend a month is when you write, or, and as you say, 1 hour a day. That's about what I do, about 1 hour or so a day in the mornings. Do you prefer mornings or nights?
I do prefer mornings. I feel like I'm more creative. The earlier, the better. The sooner after I wake up, it's that's my best writing time. Yeah. I feel like, whatever talks to me in my sleep, or the characters who want to change their story in the middle of the story, that always happens in my sleep. So if I can get on that first thing in the morning, then that's the best for me.
So the characters change your story when you sleep? Is that what you said?
They're always doing things that I didn't think. You know how you sit down and you have this plan, the character's going to do this, they're going to do that. And some characters are they behave, and then other characters are no girl, I'm going to leave my husband. And you're now do this.
Really? Come on. That's not my plan.
I have no plan. At the end of the story, I thought y'all would be together. Okay, girl, let me work on that.
Oh, I love that. So you're led by your characters? You're
there's a certain point of writing where I'm led by my characters. I think even they probably speak to me before, but I'm not recognizing that that's the character. It's ooh, this is cool. I should play with this idea and see how I could write it. I think that's probably the character, but before they be turned into whoever they are. But yeah, I used to think that was so weird when people talked about characters talking to them. Like, no, it's real.
It's interesting. So what are your major themes?
I talk a lot about queerness. There's always going to be something, about being African American. Frequently lately, there's been a lot about like the changes that happen throughout life. You always hear about like middle age or like the midlife crisis, but you always hear about that from men. And then, the more I learn about astrology and stuff, like everybody goes through it. We all go through it basically like at your quarter life crisis and then your midlife. And then when you're 75, you didn't figure it out. But 45. Nobody tells you that, right? Nobody says it. And so then you're like, what is going on with my life? And it's like, okay, this is real. There are not too many books that really kind of focus on just this theme. Yeah. And let me just explore this because all of my friends and I are going through the same things at the same time.
Yeah, I get it. That's great. And I like how it's through the female perspective, because it's a whole different experience than what a man goes through. And, just like, I've been going through it. I kind of feel like I have a handle of it now, but it was really like, slow down a bit. You don't want to be so public, accepting aging, watching, following Instagram blogs where the women are all gray, preparing.
My hair is gray, and now my hair has been gray my whole life. It's blue because my hairstyles like to put color in it. But so now it's like acceptable, and now everybody thinks it's cool. But for the longest, people would be like, "Are you gonna dye that? What are you gonna do about that gray?" Yeah, I hate my gray. So now, but I had to follow other women who are like, "Yeah, my hair is gray. It's been gray for a long time."
Yeah, I'm not there yet. It's genetic, and we gray later. But I'm already like, I'm not gonna dye. Like I'm not gonna dye my hair. I'm gonna go full long crazy gray witchy. I'm already like mentally preparing myself for it.
Seems right up your alley.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I'll just be in black with gray long witchy hair and be that person. So what advice would you tell your younger writer self?
To prioritize writing, like make it a priority. Like you get in a relationship and you will prioritize that relationship. You can find time for friends or family or all, especially women, we are always figuring out a way to take on other people's problems, to take on the world. So if you can find time to try to change the world, you can find time to change yourself. And if that's writing for you, you got to prioritize it. So I would literally tell my younger self, figure it out, make it work the same way you would make anything else work.
So you say you're a serial entrepreneur. Why writing? Because you could, you said you're successful as a serial entrepreneur. What is it about that keeps you going back to the page?
It's like, I love writing and reading probably almost more than anything in the world. I've always loved writing. I've been writing since I could remember. My mom says I started reading at 3. So that's when she knew I could read. So, and I've always read a ton of books. I have all these journals around, 16-year-old Adrien had some issues. I've read some of those journals and she's okay, girl. But so it's just my life. It's what fills me up. It's what makes me happy. I literally am my happiest. I told my wife years ago that I wanted to be my retirement is me under a tree writing, but I didn't and I don't have to be retired to be under a tree writing. I should be doing it now.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same. I'm overflowing with journals. I have an entire dresser that's just journals and books. I showed you my to be read pile. There's a spot where I sit and it's just it's like I nest with books. It's
right.
So what are you reading right now?
Right now I am reading, what is it? When No One's Watching by Alyssa, I think her name is Cole, probably messing that up, but she's a romance, she doesn't like to be called a romance novel. Up until now, she's been writing romance, and so she wrote thriller, and it's pretty great. I'm rereading Fiona Zed's Bliss, and I'm rereading Cherie's Return to Arms. Whenever I'm writing about certain things, if I know books that have those themes, then I'll kind of try to see how other people did it, how they deal with it, because I did not go to school for writing. So I feel like I'm teaching myself how to write by reading.
Yeah. So did you make a conscious decision to not go to school for writing, or it just the time wasn't there? Because I made a conscious decision to like not do the MFA route. And so was that the case for you?
It was. My friends who have MFAs were all like, don't go for an MFA. You don't need an MFA. You can learn everything that we learned. And then there's like this thing about MFAs with writers of color and how the spaces are not that great for your writing. And so a lot of people are just like, it's not worth the added expense. But the only thing I think that you really definitely get out of that is you are in somewhere working on your writing for whatever that program looks like. And if you're in regular life, you're not carving out that time that you would have to if you were in school.
And the connections, I've heard the connections too for that. But yeah, I get that about it. It might not be the most, because for some people it might destroy their writing being in that kind of environment.
Definitely heard that.
You know, so I think it depends on the type of person you are. Some people, MFAs, they thrive and it's exactly what they need. And they respond really well to feedback. And other people are like, I'm going to carve this out. I'm more of a carve it out in the corner by myself privately kind of person, you know? So, but MFAs haven't come up in Typewriter Talks. So thank you for that insight. Cause you know,
I definitely think that there are people who are there for, and they'll do great. But for me, like I often look at other people who have it. There are a lot of successful writers who have their MFAs, so I recognize that that's a thing. But that's kind of the only time it ever really comes up for me when I want it, and I'm just like, oh, you know, they're in this space and they're getting these opportunities because of these degrees. Like even some of the workshops and stuff you apply for, they want you to have been somewhere with the name. So that's kind of the only time it ever really comes up where I'm like, I probably should have, But
that's nice what you guys do at Kitchen Table. Like you provide a venue for people to just write. It's not about what your background is or, you know, you just want to provide a space in a community and nurture them. And I think it's wonderful that people have women of color have that resource that they can come to. As you said, because sometimes MFA programs aren't necessarily open to people of color or don't feel open.
Yeah. You don't feel like they're going to handle your work well or whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm learning now that aside from like Kitchen Table and what we're creating, because we're basically creating with Kitchen Table kind of what we need, what's out there, what, you know, we think about what workshop would work. What are you missing, you know, in your work? What do you need to focus on? And that's what we do. There's so many different places. As I do research for our work, I find all these different organizations that are offering workshops and retreats. So you can kind of get that MFA thing on your own pace. You know, you just go to these different workshops and work on whatever your craft is.
Yeah, that's
that way.
That was our goal with Keepsake Lit, to just kind of create writing classes that were out of the box that you wouldn't necessarily get. You know, and all of our teachers have been through MFA programs and they're published authors, and just to kind of create a space that was a low price point. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of our students are older, like they've waited their whole lives to write. And a lot of them are older women. So it's really interesting, like the whole segments of the population are kind of excluded from, you know, that kind of hierarchy of learning. So it's great that both of our organizations create a platform for people to come in and get their needs met, you know?
I just looked at something you guys were offering, one of your workshops. I was like, I'm gonna try to take that. Something that's coming up.
Yeah, we had to transition to all online classes, and it's so we miss the face-to-face. So, you know, but when the weather cools down, maybe you guys the same, you know, you can offer things outside and have more. Luckily we have like 9 months of the year of nice weather. So
we are lucky that way in Florida. That's like, as Cherie and I are talking about it, like what are we going to do next and what's going to happen when the world opens up and where we're going to take it. But yeah, a lot of our stuff has been outside anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. So who are some of your favorite authors?
So my favorite, he's problematic right now, but I haven't divorced him yet, is Stephen King. He's one of my like top tier favorite. Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Cherie, Renee Thomas, just like, I'm just like a reader. So almost everybody.
Yeah. You're an equal opportunity reader.
I read everything.
Yeah.
I didn't used to read romance, but then I became friends with Fiona, and I realized, like, because I was one of those people that was like poo-pooing on romance, and I'm like, oh no, there are some romance writers that are really writing some stuff. So yeah.
Oh yeah, romance like guilty pleasure.
Like self-help.
Say that again. What would you say?
The only thing I don't read too much of is like self-help. It's not my favorite.
Yeah. Well, I went through a whole biography self-help phase.
Me too, and I think that's why I'm burnt out.
Yeah, right. You're kind of like, okay, I've heard this before.
It's like the same, right? It's like no matter where they're from, black, white, poor, rich, whatever. It's like the same thing. It's like you could almost write, that's like the recipe for the book.
That's funny. So what do you do if you get blocked? Where do you go for inspiration?
Typically I'll read or I will work on something else. Those are my two main things. Somebody else told me that when you get blocked, you're working on the wrong thing. And so,
oh, I like that.
It's like, because their thing is that there is no such thing as writer's block. And it was like, so when you get blocked in one thing, then it's probably time for you to turn to something else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like reading multiple books. It's like,
right? It's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll go and I'll start to read a book, and it's like, if I'm not even seeing the words, like if I don't disappear into the words and I have to reread the same thing over and over, I'm like, oh, this isn't the book for me. And I just set it aside. So that's a cool idea. Like just work on something else, like revise something or move on to something else, or, that's why it's good to have multiple projects going, possibly, if you're able to do that. Some people aren't.
If you're able to do that. Yeah. I don't know what people who work on one thing do, but my ADHD has me all over the place.
That's funny. So, what would be your holy grail piece of writing advice?
My holy grail piece of writing advice.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's to write for you and turn off that I'm writing for an audience thing. So I know for me, that's the thing that gets in my way the most. And I have to keep reminding myself, like, you decided to write this book because you thought it needs to be out there. Who knows who the audience is? You never know what your audience is going to look like. If you sell books now, like, I have people that buy my book in like England and stuff, and I'm like, how the hell did you even find out about me or whatever? And that really helps me realize I don't know who I'm writing for. So just to write the book.
So yeah, that is good advice. Like, your job is to get the work out there. Like, don't block that flow.
Block it. Don't worry about if it's going to be good or if it's going to be on the bestsellers list. Because like for me, I'm like very hypercritical of myself. So I'll be thinking like first draft, crappy draft. Everybody knows first drafts suck. And I'm like, I want to be on the New York Times bestseller list. Why am I there? We're not there yet.
Yeah. So what you say, you have most of your published work is poetry. That's what you told me before we started this interview. So do you find yourself drawn more to fiction or more to poetry, or it just depends on where you're at, or both?
More to fiction, but I process what's going on in the world through poetry, and so I have a lot of that because the world is crazy. So I have a lot more poetry than I have fiction.
So why do you feel you're more drawn to fiction?
There's something about seeing yourself in a story, or seeing the way you think in a story. I'm loving that there's so many of these books with these unlikable female characters, because I think a lot of people like me, but I feel like I'm an unlikable female character because I'm kind of dry. My wife calls me Daria, and I love people, but I love books more. So it's like, I'd much rather not be talking to you. I'd much rather be like in my house writing, like reading my book. Like, I would probably have been a really good, those writers back in the day that were like recluses and their agents did all the stuff. I would have been a great one of those.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say I'm the same, but as the executive director of that's kind of my dirty little secret. Like, I realized that last night. Like, I just leave me alone in my laboratory to like read and write and
like I can talk writers with my friends. I can talk writing with you, but like the rest of that stuff, I don't really.
It's so funny. Like, some of my very, very dearest friends have never been to my apartment. It's just like they've never even been in my house, because I just like, this is my laboratory. Like, this is my like private space to like, not, I don't know. It's just funny. Like, some of my, it's crazy. Like, people I've been friends with for like years have been like, I've never been to your apartment. I'm like, really?
You gotta throw a party when the COVID is over. And then you can do it once and tell them, okay, you guys will never come again. So
we talked about it because there's a poet that lives downstairs, Sarah, and then Denzel, who runs the studio 620, lives next door, and he's a poet. So we said, let's just do a big house party where we have performances in our apartments. You know, when there's no
that'd be so awesome,
right? When there's no pandemic, and then people just move from different parts of that's funny. So, all right, so we would love to hear some of your work.
All right. So I'm going to read from Brownish Green Female Sheep. It's published through my publisher, Vital Narratives. And what I picked out is kind of timely for where we are in the world right now. This book is about love and all the different ways of love. This is called Formal Notice. I'm willing to move my ribs to the side for you. Pluck open my back and give you pieces of my spine so that you can stand up straighter. Invite you to have the pick of the draw when choosing my shoulders. Choose wisely. I want you to be properly prepared as you carry the weight of the world. You've been doing it alone for so long, but 2 heads are better than 1, and 3 shoulders are better than 2. I will give you my heart, but I need it. Couldn't give you pieces of me so unequivocally without it, but I'll give you a kidney, a sliver of my liver, part of my lungs. I will give you my tongue if only I knew you would use it to speak up. Why don't you ever just speak up? Why don't I just speak up? There's an old saying advising people to do unto others as you'd have them do to you, but what if you've given others your Milky Way and half of your stars out of the goodness of your heart and they can barely part with a kind word? What then? What do I do when I've shown you that I'm willing to give you more than half of all of me and I realize that you can't be bothered to do the same? What then? What if I changed, gave to the world an exact replica of whatever it is that the world has given to me? Dear world, I taught you how to treat me, accepted your bullshit even though I was allergic to it, even though I knew it for exactly what it was. Things have got to change. I cannot continue to dry out my oceans to fill your riverbeds when you wouldn't offer me a cold drink of water on a hot summer day. Consider this my formal notice, that the old ways are done, and when you start to notice, don't be surprised. Remember, you done already been told. So I wrote that about America, clearly. This is like, this book came out in 2016. And I feel like we're in the same space and being a Black woman and everybody being like, oh, Black women are gonna save the world. And nobody cares about Black women. So it's like, we've gotta change as people.
Yeah, I just read Another Country by James Baldwin for our book club. And it was like, I'm still like digesting that book. I probably will digest that book for the rest of my life. And I was just thinking about him like as a Black gay man who had this gift in him. And, I was having a conversation with my friend Denzel, who's also a Black man, not a Black gay man, but a Black man. And just all these people that have these stories and these voices. And if they're not being represented and they're not getting the tools to write and put their words out there. And it's like, Chadwick Bosewick, is that how, did I just say his name right? Chadwick Bosewick, who just passed away. He talked about like all these stories that are there to be told. Mm-hmm. That, if they're not being represented, I mean, in movies, like 13% of movies are about African Americans and they're put out by Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry. Like, come on. Like,
right. Because you're not even representing the full gamut of Black America.
You're not even representing the full gamut of America. Like, right. All these stories that are not being told because the white lens is the default. And it's just like, so thank you for writing your story and sharing your words. And, whether or not you're one of the Black women that saved the world, you're still out there making your mark and through Kitchen Table and through your writing and, keep at it because it's, it's bullshit.
It is. It's just, the thing about it that bothers me the most and it's bothered me the most lately is that everybody's talking about these things kind of throughout history, but it feels like we are moving forward, but we still are not nowhere near where we should be. And we shouldn't be telling these same stories. The fact that we're still, some of this stuff is so relevant, 20, 30, 60 years, it's just like, come on, we're better than this, America. We're smarter than this. We've got to make changes.
Yeah, and also I was having a conversation with another friend about, it's constantly the narrative about oppression and slavery. And it's like, she's like, I want to be telling about how we've transformed and how we've moved on and how we've grown. And I want to be telling those kinds of stories. And I was, yeah, let's, you know, and empowering stories. And, you know, we have our book boxes that we put out, and we don't want to just have books about how, you know, people of color have, you know, overcome racism or oppression. We want to have, you know, exciting stories about living lives, and, you know, kids see themselves. I mean, even in kids' books, like the protagonists are mostly white males, you know, and it's just like, and we get books donated, and they're used books. And so we're, you know, most of them are white protagonists because they're being donated from white neighborhoods. And it's just all these things that people don't think about. And then when you kind of, you know, really look at it, you're like, this is bullshit.
People don't wanna, like, a lot of people don't want to try something new, which is interesting. But I think you have to read other people's stories, even to just get angry for other people. Like, I listen to a lot of crime podcasts and read a lot of crime books and a lot of like serial killers. I'm like, white women, why the fuck aren't y'all pissed? Like, these people are killing y'all. Like, what? Why is this not like a widespread thing? How like people just are like snatching y'all up? You're more likely to be snatched up and never come back. And, you know, by serial killers. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, people have to read other people's stories. But I totally agree. I'm not, one of my biggest things that I speak about all the time with my writing, I'm not writing about, like, I'm Black. So of course you may get a little bit of what it's like to be a Black person. And I do face different things. So that's probably going to come up in a novel. But I don't write books about oppression or racism. That's not my focus. You know, if it comes up, it comes up, because that's life. But I don't want to tell those stories. I want to tell magical stories out there. I want little black girls to know that it's okay to think that you're a princess, or, you know, be in love with castles, or, you know, dragons or whatever. Like, just other stories. Like, people living in a house and having a regular life that doesn't have to do with the fact that somebody's father wasn't there or whatever. Yeah. Those are the stories that are being bought. So it makes you think that that's what is out there. But I grew up with my mother and my father in my house, and they're still together, you know, and most of my friends are like that, you know. So, like, yes, we definitely need to change the narrative. So, well, I think that is an awesome way to end this. Let's change the narrative. I love it. Thank you so much, Adrien, for being on Typewriter Talks. And I'm Maureen McDowell with Keepsake Lit. You can find out all about our programming at keepsakelit.org. We are a nonprofit, so we do appreciate donations and support for our programming to keep Typewriter Talks going and bring authors like Adrien on. And we'll be back next week for episode 23. So thank you so much. And please, everyone, read and write on. Love it. Thank you.